though, there have been more raids on dispensaries and medical patients
that's a
under
different deal.
Obama's leadership than any other
Right, they
president.
But the dispensary is a different deal. They're differentiating between the average patient who's taking care of it on their own versus these co-ops, and a lot of these co-ops are not doing the right things, which is why they get attention drawn to themselves. But at the same time, DEA is going to do what DEA does. They're just not.
Well, of
allowed
course
to
they
go
are.
after.
We went and made them.
Exactly.
When's the last time you saw a government organization repealed?
You know, you're going to hop them up with 6 Viagras and tell them no.
They're just, yeah, you know what? We're going to disband the DEA. We're going to give you back all these billions of dollars that we have and all this equipment. We're just going to find different jobs. We're good.
Well, what we've done is we've eliminated another war without a defined end result. What do you call those?
Perpetual war.
Perpetual war. You know, once we take out the drug war, it's the same thing as terrorism. It's a war on terrorism. How do you win a war on terrorism? There's always going to be terrorists. There's always going to be drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to do is take out, end a perpetual war. It's wasteless spending, and it's a war that cannot be won. Not only that, but the war is failing. We're spending a lot of tax dollars. There's a lot of people in prison.
More people are smoking marijuana today than ever before.
Yep,
so
they're loving it.
So you tell me. You tell me. How are we
They
doing?
haven't been able to eradicate it yet.
Well, here's the crazy thing, though. You take the microcosm of a prison. Now, a prison is, in theory, a completely sealed environment. Everything that goes in and out is tightly controlled and checked. I mean, you've got a population. That's it. I mean, as far as that is the perfect ideal of big government, control. They've got a guard for every person. You're on lockdown. There's still drugs. They can't even keep drugs out of prisons.
Yep. And they can't blame it on the Mexican cartels because we've pretty much been supplying ourselves for a while.
It doesn't matter who's to blame, does it?
Oh no! Well, that's that Fox News vitamin. Here's where you put your blame. Put your hate here.
Well, and I've talked to soldiers on the ground in Iraq that or in Afghanistan. Their jobs were to stand there and watch fields.
Yeah, opium
and marijuana. They're over there. The drug war is going on, coexisting with the war on terrorism. And a lot of countries would tell you, a lot of other countries will tell you, hey, the war on drugs in our country is spearheaded by the United States involvement. It's not our country that's going after these drug
that's
dealers.
because
it's the U.S. telling us we have to.
It's
we had to go over there to corner the market.
It's the policy of the United States decision makers that the way that you fight the war on drugs, first and foremost, is you attack the supply. And the problem there is attacking the supply doesn't work. Marijuana, opium, cocaine, do you know what they're worth outside of these borders? Nothing. They're worth nothing. You can go ahead and seize 2 billion tons of cocaine. There's still thousands of acres back in Colombia ready to make some more. So it doesn't gain its value until it's on the street here in the United States. So you go and you try to fight Afghanistan. You were talking about the soldiers guarding the fields in Afghanistan. There was like a 2,000% increase in the United States targeting poppy fields in Afghanistan right at the time that the war on terror began.
Yep.
Yet it had absolutely zero effect on the amount of Afghani heroin that was making its way into Europe.
Well, that
Zero.
wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to corner the market. We needed to take over the operation and then run it.
Well, they're doing a shitty job.
If we were going over there to eradicate it, then they should have just napalmed every field they can find, and then the end. But no. Now we have people out on our side. Well, not our side, but under government guys pulling all these other crap missions to where they pretty much take over a drug operation, and they're the new dealer.
Can't we get Monsanto involved in this somehow?
To grow genetic improved marijuana.
That's what I'm saying. I'll bet you
and
find
the government would be okay with that?
The Europeans would be singing a different tune.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of what Monsanto started off as was for pesticides, so you could grow plants without having to use pesticides. So now that marijuana,
but
you don't need pesticides. the worst thing you're going to get, well, let's
Mites.
maybe not with, you'll get mites and stuff like that if you're talking about smoking marijuana, the cannabis.
You might get
But
mites.
if you want to talk about hemp, which is amazing that we don't have hemp in this country, blows my mind.
Oh, too close
that,
together.
That you can't affect, mites ain't going to affect it. You don't need pesticide. It's one of the easiest crops to grow. The hard part about growing hemp is actually the processing of it, cutting it down.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, though, because at one point, this country, it was illegal for you not to dedicate a portion to your land to the growth of hemp. And then it was made illegal, just like marijuana. They didn't want black jazz musicians near their white daughters, so
They still feel that way.
If I had white
but now
daughters,
it's-
I
now
wouldn't
it's
want
blacks and Mexicans for
black
the
jazz
marijuana.
musicians near
And
them.
then they did the same thing with opium. Opium was legal in this country. No one gave a crap until they wanted to suppress the Chinese. And then all of a sudden it was illegal, and then they just started pushing it that way. This has been more like a racial profiling controller than an actual issue.
Well, and it's always been like that.
Yeah.
Everything in this country revolves around that.
Well, is it really racial though, or was the race?
No, it was
the
absolutely
paint job
racial.
that was put on it to sell it to white people. You know what I'm
They
saying?
But that was the thing. They weren't trying to sell it to white people. They were making these films where they had demonized blacks. These white guys would dress up in blackface and come through the trees and kidnap the white woman, and she's screaming. Then the guys would form an army and go to rescue her. That kind of whole thing. But they did that whole same thing with marijuana. They were linking it all to black musicians. That's how they damned it before around Reefer Madness.
So, but my point is, let's just say, who was the guy? What was the guy that was behind Anslinger?
Anslinger.
So he's got a bug up his butt for marijuana for some reason. He knows that he can't make marijuana scary to middle America, but he knows damn well sure he can make black people scary to middle America.
Yep.
So he kind of wrapped it around that, the whole...
With William Hearst's help.
Sure.
So, here we are,
Yep, still
70
suffering from
years
the hand
later.
of the attack.
and it's still the same principle. How many more times, how much more likely is an African American going to go to prison compared to a white person for possession?
Well, you don't have any. I've never met a black guy that told me a story about how he got pulled over with an ounce of weed in his pocket and the cop just let him go. But I couldn't count on both hands and feet how many white guys have told me that story.
8 times. 8 times more likely that a black man is going to go to prison than a white man for possession.
Yeah, because we're equal as far as doing it, but we get prosecuted.
In all honesty, there's more marijuana use from white people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I mean, comparatively though, you got to think of population size. You know, and if
but
the ratio is probably
you can
the
wring
same.
all that out in the numbers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now you can make the same point with any crime, though, not just marijuana use. You know, you can say, oh, well, a black guy is 8 times more likely to be arrested for murder or for robbery or for speeding, whatever it is. Across the board, black people are going to be more likely to get arrested and prosecuted for a crime than white people.
Right, but it was used to demonize the whole thing. The whole marijuana movement that the hippies were trying to pull was completely getting derailed by that. And then they started passing the laws where they were mandatory minimums and raising the time. And I actually have some numbers from the Pew poll that sentences for Americans convicted of federal drug crimes rose 36%, an average of 20 months in 30 years, while sentences for all other offenders declined by 3%. And in 1980, there were 5,000 people in the federal system for drug crimes, whereas 2015 we're at 95,000. So this is all a banking scheme for these guys to keep making these prisons and just keep locking people up for minimal offenses where rapists get a slap on the wrist. I don't know. I'm kind of losing my mind over that. That's quite a bit of ridiculous.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good time for a break then. We'll come back. We're going to pick up on this conversation. So is the Pope a racist? Is that why he doesn't support?
Oh, we don't need a whole segment. Yes.
Is that why he doesn't support legalization?
The answer is yes, but tune in anyway to the next segment of 13 Folds Radio on rifreeradio.org.
These friends of mine will come and go. I'm the first to leave and last to know. I've I'd be swimming in the face of flames. For these friends of mine I've overpaid. And I guess I want it. I guess I want it. I just want you to know. Veins are glistening. So thanks a lot for listening. I guess I want it. I guess I want it. I just want you to know. All these things make me who I am. Maybe all these things make me who I am. Maybe all these things make me who I am. Only looking out with my head down. All these things make me who I am. Maybe all these things make me who I am. Maybe all these things make me who I am. Only looking out with my head down. I guess I want it. I guess I want it. I just want you to know. Someone let the lights on. 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 All these things make me who I am. Maybe all these things make me who I am. Maybe all these things make me who I am. Only looking out with my head down. All these things make me who I am. Maybe all these things make me who I am. Maybe all these things make me who I am. Only looking out with my head down. I guess I want it. I guess I want it. I just want you to know. Hypnotized from the day you were born. Time shakes, found you at the water. At first you were my father, now I love you like a brother. Earthquakes, shake the dust behind you. This world at times will blind you. Still I know I see